Welcome at the University of Münster in Germany. We are here at the Institute of Nuclear Physics together with Professor Alfons Khoukaz, who is leading the international future jet activity in the framework of the HadronPhysics 2 project FP7. Alfons, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, my name is Alfons Khoukaz and I'm a senior scientist here at the Institute of Nuclear Physics in Münster. I'm an educated physicist and I'm mainly involved in HadronPhysics experiments. I'm very much interested in meson production experiments, especially close to the production threshold, but we also investigate here precision measurements on mesons, meson masses, but also rare and forbidden decays of mesons. These experiments are performed, for example, at the Anke and Vasa at COSI experiment in Jülich at COSI, and in addition we participate at the PANDA experiment, which prepares currently an experiment for the future FAIR facility at Darmstadt.
Could you shortly explain how participation in such experiments looks like and how especially young people are involved?
Well, young people, young students and young researchers are actively involved in the preparation of these experiments. This includes, for example, the computer simulations and numerical calculations. And of course, they also participate actively in the experimental runs. Later on, the obtained data get analyzed by these researchers. And so the participants, the students and researchers work as a complete project. Of course, it is important that the participating institutes design and construct special devices for the experiments. And our working group here in Münster, for example, is specialized on cryogenic targets for storage rings.
You mentioned cryogenic targets. What is the role of targets in storage ring experiments?
Well, typically in accelerator experiments, particles are accelerated to very high velocities, for example, close to the speed of light. And this means that experiments often have to be done in vacuum. A special type of accelerator is a storage ring. This storage ring allows to store particles for a long time, for example, hours or even days. These storage rings are especially important if you want to perform precision measurements, for example, or if you run the experiments with very rare particles such as are antiprotons. These accelerated particles are shot onto so-called targets, and here the interaction takes place. The data you gain allow to study fundamental forces in our universe. The properties of these targets are mainly given by the experimental needs, and the precision of the data you gain later on strongly depend on the quality of these targets.
What are the special requirements on targets for storage ring experiments?
Important aspects for targets are, for example, the size of the target at the interaction zone, but also the thickness of the target itself. If you run your experiment at a storage ring, the thickness of this target must be thick enough to guarantee enough reaction rate. On the other hand, the target must be thin enough to guarantee also single particle interaction. So in practice, this means that you can usually not operate your experiment with thin fibers or foils in storage rings because they are much too thick for these kind of experiments. In addition, there is often the need to use hydrogen as target material. And this is a problem because you cannot produce pure fibers or foils out of hydrogen. So this means other techniques have to be applied and to developed.
You are leading the future jet activity which investigates cryogenic targets. What is the general idea of this activity?
A simple approach would be just to use a gas beam for your accelerator experiment. This one can do, but here one has to face several problems. One problem is a bad vacuum which you have at the interaction zone, and in addition you have a poorly defined interaction region. Furthermore, you have only low densities if you operate your experiment at large distances from the nozzle, and this means that in principle it is not possible to perform high-intensity experiments at large distances far behind the nozzle. An elegant approach to cover this problem is the use of liquid or frozen particles in vacuum. And the general idea of the Future Jet project is to use cryogenic jets in vacuum with particles in the size of micrometers or nanometers. And we also want to get a significantly improved target technology, and this we want to do to allow for new future experiments.
Which are the scientific goals of this activity?
The main goal of this European activity is to provide innovative target concepts to enable powerful future experiments. In detail, we significantly want to increase the target thickness at large distances, of course in combination with ultra-pure target materials. And furthermore, this we want to do with only small target beam extensions.
What kinds of target technologies are investigated in the FutureJet activity?
Different accelerator experiments have different requirements on the target properties. The FutureJet activity concentrates here on 3 related technologies. Promising approaches for future accelerator experiments are, for example, the pellet beam, microjet beams, as well as cluster jet beams. All of these have in common that they prepare a stream of small target particles, but they have complementary properties.
Could you shortly describe these 3 types of targets?
In case of pellet beams, we produce streams of frozen droplets with same diameter. They typically have a size in the order of 20 micrometers. If smaller target particles are needed, one can use a microjet target. So here we produce regular beams of liquid or frozen spheres with diameters in the order of a few micrometers. And if even lower particle diameters are needed, then one can use cluster jet beams. They produce a spray of frozen particles with sizes in the order of nanometer to micrometer.
Who is participating in this European project?
In the FutureJet activity, several leading European institutes have joined forces. We have contributing institutes from Austria, Italy, Germany, Sweden, as well as groups from Russia. At all of these institutions, groups of specialists, mainly physicists and engineers, work together on the different targets. In parallel, the experimental developments are supported by experts from theory, which are also available at these institutes.
You have mentioned several international institutions who participate in this project. How do you work together in practice?
The members of the institute and groups meet at regular intervals, and this is done in order to discuss the working plans, but also to present and communicate the obtained results. This is done in practice on dedicated meetings of our activity, but also in the framework of conferences or meetings from experiments. Several tasks of the FutureJet activity are closely related, and this means that several sub-projects are covered by groups from different institutions and countries. In addition, it is a common practice that guests from other institutes support local activities with their specialized know-how.
What are the opportunities for young students and scientists in this FutureJet project?
This European activity supports an excellent education of young students and researchers by working at the forefront of science and technology. They experience teamwork in large cooperations on a multinational level. They get early in contact with experts from different fields of physics, and in addition they get close in contact with engineers, and by this they get experience with design and construction of complex facilities. Of course, it is possible for them also to present their work on national and international conferences. It is also important to note that young researchers and students contribute significantly to all of these projects.
Why is the European support of the FutureJet project so important? What does society gain?
The international activity brings together specialists from different countries. It allows for a close cooperation of the participating institutes, and it guarantees a concentration of knowledge which clearly supports the European high technology on internal targets. The achieved progress and the gained scientific results are written down in reports and publications. We get here an information on new technologies which is freely available later on for the whole society. And the results might also be interesting for other fields, for example, like laser interactions. And by this, the study of science, and especially the study of science in Europe, gets highly attractive for young people.
So, thank you so much for this interview and for your time.
You're welcome.